you.
There you go.
What asshole keeps moving my pen?
Me.
Oh.
And not for any good reason.
You just keep doing it?
No, I just, something will go, what the hell is happening to my watch? Look at, it's like my watch
Oh, it
Time
looks
doesn't
like the
exist
eclipse.
anymore.
is experiencing.
Nope, time's not there anymore. It's just a blotch. That means time doesn't exist.
Hell?
Oh my God, it's the same
Whatever
on
it
my
is,
watch.
it's
That's
not
it.
good.
This is the end of the world. Everybody,
was
quick,
trying
read,
to pair.
read Revelations.
Yeah, we're all. Well, you guys are going to the beach. I might be going to the beach with you guys.
You're coming.
I might be,
Come to the beach.
but it's not really a beach.
What do you mean?
It's not a real. It's not like a beach, like an actual beach.
As the beach skeptic amongst us,
Yeah.
I would love for you to explain to me what makes a real beach
Yeah.
and a not real
A
beach.
real beach has, warm water.
Okay.
Is the water not warm?
It's going to be kind of cloudy this weekend,
That's fine.
Yeah,
which I'm fine with.
I don't know. Beaches exist in like the Caribbean,
Okay.
nearly exclusively.
So
Like
are
the
we
beaches in
not-
California are not beaches.
The fuck are you talking
They're
about?
just places where land ends.
I go swimming in Southern California.
I mean, like some people drive with their feet. Doesn't mean it's supposed to be done.
Scottish beaches are just mud flats that turn into water that is indistinguishable from the clouds.
Like LA.
So it's just sort of you just kind of walk into whiteness or grayness, and that's it.
Walk into whiteness should be the motto of Scotland.
Yes.
Wait, I'm confused.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we're going camping on a place where there is sand, which
Yes.
feeds into an ocean or a sea.
Yes.
A gulf, if
Yeah.
you will.
Yeah.
How's that not a beach? What else do you need?
Because it's not a place where you
I think
would
he's saying
want
it's not
to
a good
spend
beach,
a
I think
good
is what he's
time.
saying.
Yeah, I just shortened that to beach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went down with Abby and some friends a month ago to Galveston, which I'm going to describe as a hilarious beach.
I like Galveston.
Galveston's a hilarious beach. All of the waters, it's the color of coffee that gave up. Just stale coffee.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And like I was fine with it because
Like Pilot gas station at 3 o'clock in the morning coffee.
And like, I was fine with it because I realize that much of the appeal of beaches is getting hot and sleepy and presaging death. For me, that's never been a big appeal. I'm an active person that doesn't want to get hot and tired. So I don't mind if it's cloudy out and it's kind of cool. And when we went down there, it was like, 45 degrees. So it was perfect for heating.
Yeah.
I could put on my ridiculous Scottish outfit and like walk around the beach. But it was not like particularly pretty. It wasn't like a white sand. It wasn't one of those postcards with blue stuff. It was, 3 a.m. Coffee color.
No. But if we can like build a fire on it,
Yeah.
and
Oh, it might be fun camping,
yeah,
but
it's
no
still
one's going to be
beach.
doing beach shit.
So I shouldn't bring the floaties.
I'll get in the water. If it's cold, it'll be good for you.
'Cause I have a lot of
Oh
floaties.
God, that's morally wrong. That's gross.
I have to do an 8-mile run, and I plan to run right into the water at the end of that. That's part of the film.
I would understand. I understand it the most if you were at the end of an 8-mile run. I would understand running right into freezing cold water.
I'm going to wake up that way. I'll just wake up and walk into the whiteness.
Is it actually freezing cold? Because I feel like the Gulf of Mexico is usually like warmer than everywhere else.
I think it's a
right?
matter of checking the longitude and latitude. I don't think that.
I think
all-
it'll
we
be.
have to
I think it'll
fucking-
be fine. It'll because water retains heat for a very long time. Like it's.
Isn't it brown because so much oil has leaked into it?
Well, that is my bigger fear because it's near Corpus Christi, and that place is toxic.
That'll just be like suntan lotion and condoms, right? And like daiquiris and shit
Basically.
from like college students. I don't know. It looked to me like it was just dirt.
The good news is you'll be able to change car parts easier.
Dude, it's 72 degrees.
Yeah, that's
not
warmer
freezing.
than Barton Springs. Barton Springs is
Yeah,
68.
no, another more freezing cold water.
You can't even get
You're
health benefits
such
from
a
it.
lizard. It can't all be Florida, dude. It can't be 98.
I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying that
Florida's
it's not
like-
a beach.
Florida's like walking into a jacuzzi. It's not even comfortable.
Exactly. Everything before the last part was absolutely correct.
It's not comfortable. If you're going from hot air into hot water, it's like
Is it opposite day? Of course it's
pee.
comfortable.
72 degrees is.
Does anybody
is
go into it?
perfect.
Does anyone go into a jacuzzi and say, "Oh, gross"? No, people build jacuzzis so they can be in that.
Yeah, but okay, but
Not when it's hot
I
out.
like jacuzzis, but I want it to be a thing I can go into. I want it in a confined space that I get into and go, this is warm.
Wait,
now
is
I'm
it
done.
hot
I've
now?
lost enough sperm, and then I get out.
It's going to be like mid-70s. I think it's going to be perfect.
Mid-70s is not hot.
No, it's not. But
So you want cold water in temperate climates.
I don't think 72 is that cold. You're not supposed to go into beach water and be like, this is nice and warm.
See, this is what
That
happened.
would mean we're
This
dying.
is what happened. This is why America is falling apart, because we've conditioned ourselves to not expect a pleasurable experience. We could have it. This is how we should define it. You just said you should not walk into beach water and say,
I
dare to dream. Go to the one shot. I dare in my America, we will walk into beach water and say, we should not be punishing ourselves by walking
this
into
It's
is
not
the-
punishing. You get used to it in 2 seconds. And
get
it's
used to it.
comfortable.
Oh, there we go. The language of
is the
settling.
No, 'cause it's
absolute-
You
Florida.
get used to
No,
it.
Florida, it's not comfortable from the start. It's way too hot. Like it doesn't even refresh you. It's so hot.
Doesn't even refresh.
We can
doesn't.
toss in some alligators and condoms and make you feel at home. This is the weirdest old man rant I've ever heard of. Kids today don't appreciate comfort enough. The problem with America is it's too strenuous. What we need is some real soft pillows. Fuck that.
We need to understand that it's good when it's good. One of the worst beach experience I ever had was, I guess it was, I forgot it was Cape Cod or Martha's Vineyard. They're all the fucking same to me. But
Walk
it was
into the
during the
whiteness.
summer. During the summer, like July, everybody goes out to the beach. All these friends of mine from New England, they're like, oh, this is going to be great. Oh, we're going to go out there. We're in our 20s. This is a fun time. Blah, blah, blah. Get in there. Freezing fucking cold. Absolutely freezing fucking cold. And you want to know what they told me? Same thing you just said. Don't worry. You get used to it. You get used to it.
Yeah, it's nice and
You
refreshing.
know, you want to know when else you'd be told that? If you were being euthanized. Don't worry. Don't worry. Let the icy grip of death grab you and bring you to your final resting
So
place.
you think it's only a beach if when you walk into the water, it feels like a jacuzzi?
Yeah, give or take 10, 5, 10
See,
degrees.
I
sure.
like to go out. I think it's Pedernales State Park. That's like an hour west of here. I think it's Pedernales or Nacogdoches, one of the two. And like I'll go swimming in the river in like December, January, February, and it's like probably maybe 62 degrees,
You're
which
an
is pretty
actual
cold.
sociopath.
Yeah, I'm-
so like,
for the
there's
record,
like you have no human emotions.
I am willing to shed a couple billion people to lower the global temperature by 5 degrees. I'm fine with that.
From Austin, Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young.
I'm Andrew Heaton.
I'm Jen Bridey.
And we're not wrong on this edition of the program. We are going to discuss whether or not Justice Sonia Sotomayor should retire for the good of the country. And we will discuss what else? Oh, whether or not electric vehicles are dead. This after a couple things that happened with Hertz Rent-A-Car. Don't worry. It'll all make sense. That and your emails. Jen, how you doing? You ran a race.
I did, and I was so excited that I got third. I got the bronze medal for my age group. I was very excited about it.
Congratulations.
Well, hold that, because I found out that I was third out of 3.
Nice. You know what? I think technical victories are the best victories in my opinion. Take that win. You outsmarted the systems. What you did.
I know. I never should have looked it up after the fact because they gave me the medal. I'm like, there's no way. I'm too slow for this. And he's like, you got the bronze. And we celebrated, and I just.
I did a race last year in I forget Queens Ferry, which is just outside Edinburgh. So that like it's an old town, and they have this tradition where people every year will run the bounds of the town. There's a lot. This goes on in the UK a lot, where it's this very old, making sure that your territory is not being encroached. And I ran in this, and my goal was just don't be last, don't be last. And I was like 4th to last. It was like me, a pregnant woman, and a dying man, but I beat him. I was like, I did it. Like I'm just the sopping wet, like slathered meerkat of a man limping across the line, but didn't get last. Beat the pregnant lady.
Yeah.
How long was it?
I don't remember. It was like a few miles. I don't know. I don't remember. It was like because I
It's one
jog
of the-
regularly
it's one of
here in
those
Austin.
charming- It's one of those charming like local things.
Yeah. It's called the Buryman Festival. So there's this guy that is covered in a Buryman suit, like
The hell's that?
Like imagine tiny ferns and cabbages and things. He's covered in greenery, and it's like a really, really, really old
Bury man
You
suit.
were dressed like a tree?
No. The bury. There's a guy that
Come on,
is the
Jen, keep up. The Bury man, who of course we should all known is adorned with various roughage. Please
Yes,
go on.
thank you.
I
Not a tree.
apologize.
I don't see what's so complicated about this. There's an annual Buryman festival. The Buryman goes back to pagan pre-Christian times of the Green Man that has maintained this ongoing phenomenon in South Queens Ferry, and he goes from every pub in the town where they have to give him drinks, so he gets shit canned over the course of the day, which is why they don't tend to have the same Buryman year to year. And then later, they had a dog competition that was pretty fun. And some kind of pageant for kids, like a talent competition, whatever. And then they had the race at the end, which goes back to really old stuff involving the commons. We tend to think of property as private property or state property, but there's a third thing called the commons, which is a fascinating thing to go into. And it used
Heard
to
it was
be
a real
I feel
tragedy.
like we have even it wasn't that long ago. We went into the
But it used to be like Robin Hood. The big issue in that, like again in the actual historical stuff, was the lords were taking the commons. They were taking land that was held in perpetual usufruct by the regular people. So lots of communities in Scotland and England have festivals where they will go around the boundaries of their town to make sure it's not being appropriated by lords or Vikings or something. And in this instance, you jog in a big loop.
Nice.
And I beat a pregnant lady and a dying man.
In
Yeah.
their face.
Yeah, so I did a 10K. I beat my time that I was going for, so I'm still considering it a victory. And then I also did not win the volleyball tournament that I played in the next day. So a lot of sports, mediocre performance by me.
But you want to know what? You got out there. And you
I
got
did.
and you
Good
got a
eye.
medal.
Good
and you
eye.
got a medal.
I did. I was so proud of that medal. Like I have it all propped up, but now I see it as a last place medal, so I don't know if it's going to be a keeper or
Oh,
not.
stop.
It is. I got 3 out of 3.
I love the
That's literally
Seinfeld
last.
bit that silver is just first loser. Like, I think that's a really funny way of looking at it.
How
And
far
bronze is loser out of 3.
how far off were you from 2?
I don't know. I just saw I was 3 out of 3, and I was like, "Oh fuck!" And I like slammed the computer down.
Because that's the thing. It's like, look, if you could see 2's ass and if you had hustled, you would have beaten them, then that's one thing. But if they smoked you, then it's like, look, it is what it is.
I don't know. I didn't look. I just know that I did not do as well as I thought I did.
No, you did. You did
I
exactly
did.
as well.
No, I
This is my
beat
expectation
myself.
things. Yeah, look, this goes back to the beach thing. We got to recalibrate all this.
It's true. It's true. But I did text you guys. I'm like, I got the bronze medal. Go me.
Well, you had
Yeah.
a roller coaster of a weekend.
I did,
Do we
because-
even want to talk about the
Yeah, we can't. I'm fine now, but I'm still angry about it. Yeah, the day before on Friday, I almost straight died. And I was crossing. So I went for a walk, and it was the Friday of South by Southwest, like the music half. And you and I, Andrew, we had gone to South by Southwest last year, but we did the whole conference part. And by the time the music part came, we were like, fuck it, we were over
we
this.
were done.
Yeah, so we didn't do anything. And so now that I'm living downtown, I was like, I'm going to go walk down 6th Street, see what the vibe is. I had heard that 100 bands pulled out. And so I just wanted to see, like,
They pulled out?
they pulled
Why?
out. Yeah. Because
they still
Austin's
were
not weird
playing
enough.
downtown. They were not playing as part of South by Southwest.
But it did affect the lineups because some of the free community acts ended up getting pulled into the actual festival.
And a
so,
bunch of other shows that are free that are drafting on a bunch of people being in town for South by Southwest all of a sudden had more talent to put on their shows.
Yeah,
So it was a reshuffling in terms of the mass of people.
Yes, but some bands didn't play, and it was because of something we noticed. Remember last year when we were like, so the CIA has a booth here? That's weird. Well, this year, a subsidiary of Raytheon had a booth. And people are just like, what is the defense industry do? Like, this is not something we can support right now with bombs raining down on defenseless people. And so, yeah, they pulled out. And so I wanted to walk around and just see what the vibe was. And so I was almost at 6th Street and I was crossing the street. And so when I got the white signal saying, like, it's time for me to walk, there was one car that raced me through the crosswalk. And I was like, well, you're a dick. And then as I got to the second half of the crosswalk, there was a truck that I noticed wanted to take the left through the crosswalk, and it sped up and came right at me to the point that, like, what went on in my brain was, this guy's trying to kill me. And I was able to run, and like he just barely missed me. And so I got to the other side of the road, and like people ran to me to make sure that I was okay. And I said, yeah, he didn't touch me. It was fine. And then the people that were behind me, they said that driver was looking at them and racing them through the crosswalk and probably just didn't even see me. And so, scared the actual shit out of me. And yeah, so I think that's one of the reasons why this weekend, because the volleyball tournament I wasn't even registered for, but I was just very appreciative of being alive and having my health. Because also I've been injured for the last 4 months, and now I have my arm back. I'm feeling well. I didn't die, so I was like, "Fuck it, I'm going to play every sport I possibly can this weekend." And but yeah, I got real mad, which is why I sent you guys the message where that doesn't happen in other countries. I mean, the countries I've been traveling in Portugal and in Poland, like when you walk up to a crosswalk, the cars stop. So I'm never concerned that someone is going to try to race me. Not one, but two cars race me through the crosswalk and have absolutely no cops do anything about it. Just the way that cars do whatever the hell they want, especially here in Austin. I've seen more people run red lights here in Austin than I've seen anywhere else that I've ever lived. I was infuriated by it.
Well, that is certainly true. You were definitely infuriated because you sent a voice message to our group chat that apparently did not alert my phone, and I did not see until the next day when I was very confused that happened at 7:00 in the morning because I didn't realize that had not just come in.
No, it was during happy hour.
Yeah,
happy hour.
South by is notoriously dangerous with cars. Like I don't think there has been a South by where there is not some kind of, I am assuming, drunk driving related vehicular issue.
Yeah.
That is something that I have never been around. Now, that being said, in terms of Austin, and I walk through at least South Lamar every week, or
You've got a ritual on Fridays.
I do, yeah.
Drink a beer, smoke a cigar, and walk down Lamar. Sometimes I'll see you and I'll wave.
Yeah. But I've never had a problem with that in those cases. I do think that it was definitely South by inspired.
Yeah, and I was right off of 6th Street. It happened on 5th.
Yeah.
And but one thing that we have noticed here is that the cars, when you're crossing the crosswalk, will creep right up to your ankles and then like zoom past. So even though I know the law is you're not supposed to cross while people are in the crosswalk at all, and that law is just not respected around here.
Oh, I didn't even know that was a law.
Yep.
Yeah.
See? Exactly.
I did not know.
The one thing I've noticed,
I'll do. I'm very good at like hand up eye contact if possible. Like that is something that I have. I feel like
if you hit me, I want you to feel bad because you've made eye contact with me. I want you to know that I know you hit me.
I just understand that if there's a predator and prey in this scenario, I'm not the predator.
Yeah, I'm the dead one.
So I'm like, I'm just like, hey.
The thing that I've noticed is that I do think drivers are reasonably friendly in Texas. Like I find they'll let you in, which I like. The bit that's different for me is that the Texan drivers definitely treat the shoulder of the road as an additional lane, and they're very liberal with it. So like in Oklahoma where I'm from, you only pull on the shoulder if you are pulling over because there's car trouble. You don't but trucks here they'll if you're behind a pickup, they'll just go on the shoulder and let you pass them. It's a very natural thing. Have either of you ever tried to navigate in Southeast Asia? Because that is an interesting experience. So like I was in Vietnam a few years ago, and it's like that scene in The Last Crusade where Indiana Jones is walking across an invisible beam. You just walk into traffic, and that sense of fluidity with laws is far more pronounced in Southeast Asia, where like you can drive over the sidewalk and shit, like go down some stairs, it's fine. Yeah, it's very loose.
That is how I understand it in South America.
So you will if you want to cross the street, you just walk through traffic, and the trick is go at a predictable pace. That's it. Just maintain speed, and the drivers will swerve around you like fish in a stream. If you spook and you bolt, you will die, because now they can't predict where you're going. So you just have to just walk and go at a predictable pace. It's really weird.
Yeah, I just hate that people are expected to walk amongst cars that can kill us that easily. Like one of the things that I keep thinking about is Poland. because what they've done is that they've dug tunnels under their major intersections, and so that no one has to be crossing these major roads. And it's amazing. Like, you're seeing all these 8, 9, 10-year-old kids on scooters taking themselves to and from school. And I never felt endangered by cars ever. You could ride a bike anywhere, no helmet, feel perfectly safe. I absolutely loved it. And so I've been very irritated with our infrastructure.
I forget what the heat, and this feels like more of a metric, but it was like, it might have been Matt Iglesias that was writing it, but it was something about like high trust societies and very creative societies, and that they sometimes are not in the same. And like, America is a very low trust in that if we have a common area, we will probably not take care of it, but somebody will start selling churros there. Like,
yeah.
And that, it's like, you mentioned, like, if, let's say especially during South by, if you dug tunnels underneath some of the major thoroughfares, yes, they would definitely be better. But also, I can smell the pee now, even just thinking of the idea. And I do think that part of that is a cultural thing, that America is, we don't have a high trust society.
Let's
for
pick your
common
poison,
areas.
right?
Yeah.
Because one of the reasons that I was taking that route is that the sun was about to go down, and underneath the bridge, so there's a walking path that I absolutely love that goes into downtown. But underneath some of the bridges, some people have now moved into those places,
Yes.
and sometimes they start fires, and sometimes there's quite a few of
Dicey.
them. And if I'm by myself and the sun is down, I don't feel that safe. So it's like, do I do the crosswalks, or do I do I don't know what these people are up to? Like,
I think it'd be
I
tough.
hate that I have to make those decisions every day.
I think from an engineering perspective, it'd be difficult to do in Austin. So, like, I was in Taos, New Mexico about this time last year, and went to a thing called an Earth ship. Are you all familiar with these?
Oh yeah, these are cool.
I think you'd really like them. They're
It's
really
like a big old pile of dirt.
basically,
Yeah.
It's some people make their own like geothermal powered, like heavily insulated homes out of like
They're like Hobbit homes.
yeah, they're like Hobbit homes made out of recycled goods, and they're really interesting, and they're really energy efficient. And so, going into a place in the desert that does not use grid electricity, what would the first thing I would ask be? You all know me pretty well. What would I want to know in terms of creature comforts about a home in the desert?
Air conditioning.
Air conditioning. Exactly. That is the very first thing I had. Is how do you keep it cool?
Where can I hang my dinner jacket?
Yeah. And what I found out was, there might be variation depending on latitude and stuff, but at least in Taos, if you go 5 feet below ground, the Earth is consistently 55 degrees Fahrenheit. So what you can do is put a tube underneath your home and have it come into your house, and then if you want to cool it off, you uncork the tube and you just let the cold air in, and you're basically you're using the Earth's coolness to lower the temperature of your house. And I was like, why is this not standard everywhere in Texas? Because if the grid goes down, you're screwed. Like,
Yeah.
And I started asking about this, and the reason is, at least in this part of Texas, there's a ton of limestone, and limestone is very tough. It's very difficult to dig through. It's very expensive to dig through, and it's porous. So if you were to try and do that, I don't know. Obviously, I'm not an engineer, but I think it's possible that if you were to try to build tunnels underneath the roads, that they'd flood from the limestone.
Yeah.
Well,
it
there
doesn't have
goes
to
that
be
bond
tunnels.
initiative.
There's different ways. I mean, you can put up, physical barriers. So on South Congress, there's a physical barrier between the bike lane and the cars. On the First Street Bridge, the pedestrian lane is actually completely separate from the cars. It's actually down a level and completely off of it. There's other ways to protect pedestrians. And what's frustrating is that Austin's actually one of the best cities I've ever lived in this regard. So I really shouldn't be picking on Austin, because there are so many places in this country that are far worse. But it's just frustrating now, having lived in Germany and Portugal and Poland, and having traveled and seeing what is possible and not expensive to do to protect pedestrians, and we just don't.
So my mind immediately goes to the statistics on this, and I don't know this. I assume nobody else knows this, but like, they probably have far fewer car drivers than we do because they've got more public infrastructure. But on a per capita basis, are their vehicular accidents comparable? Like per 100,000 people, do they have the same level of dumb fucks? I don't know.
I can look that up, but I can tell you that the U.S., we have 40,000 people that die every year because of vehicles. And that doesn't even count all of the injuries. And that is far and above other places. Like, we do have a car-centered infrastructure that is dangerous for anyone else who's trying to travel a different way. And it is extraordinary.
We should build gondolas like they are in L.A.
Where the hell are they building gondolas?
Dodger
doing that?
Stadium.
Dodger Stadium. That place is amazing.
Because it's being heavily criticized by the neighborhood because essentially the guy who owns Dodger Stadium hasn't been able to develop around it, so he wants to develop a live hotel area in the parking lot, but you can't do that because the parking lot's really important for Dodger Stadium. So
And not enough.
They're going to build a larger parking area with gondolas that will take you. But gondolas, for whatever reason, I don't know what billionaire in California is hawking these gondolas, but like they tried to sell one for the A's stadium in Oakland, and now it's happening in LA. Somebody is just got stuck with like 30,000 gondolas, and they're like, I gotta fucking move this. Let me donate to the appropriate people so I can get the public to fund a gigantic gondola.
It would be cool though, because Dodger Stadium is up on that hill, and walking up that is a bitch, and parking there is the actual worst. So if they can make it work, I don't hate it.
I did a city week on the political orphanage.
Well, everybody who's against it, flame Jen for taking the developer side.
I don't know. It seems cooler than having to sit in that parking lot for 4 hours.
I've actually never been to Dodger Stadium, so I really can't talk.
It's not great. Honestly, that parking lot is such a bad experience that I never want to go again. Mm-hmm. So there is something that needs to be done. Now, I think the Metro goes there now. But the trick is getting people from the Metro at the bottom of the hill to the stadium at the top of the hill, which makes me think maybe we should do a gondola.
Let's talk about Sotomayor, huh? Sonia Sotomayor, the first Latina justice on the U.S. Supreme Court, is approaching her 70th birthday this June. Amid speculation about her possible retirement, there's a strong argument for her to step down this year. That way she'd be able to ensure that President Biden would appoint a young, reliably liberal judge as her successor. With Democrats currently in control of the Senate, Sotomayor's retirement would secure the liberal seat without the risk of a Republican blockade. Democrats are quietly encouraging Sotomayor to consider retirement before the 2024 election to avoid risks associated with what might happen afterward. However, public discussions about her stepping down are tempered by concerns over appearing insensitive, giving her status as the first Latina on the court. The scenario echoes the lessons of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's tenure, highlighting the importance of strategic retirements to maintain a balance on the court. Despite the urgency, a pervasive fear of backlash over perceived discrimination may hinder direct action on this front. Son of a judge, Andrew Heaton, should Sotomayor retire this year?
This year.
I've
got two ways to look at this. There's the functional, practical side of this, and there's the broader structural side of this. Functionally and practically, yeah, she probably should. If I were a Democrat, I would want that. I do object to much of the reporting that goes on to the Supreme Court talking about it as conservative or progressive or left-wing and right-wing. I think that that's a really bad way to look at it. You've got originalists and living constitutionalists, and that's the real division there. And if I were a living constitutionalist, I would want her to step down. That way Biden could reliably put in another living constitutionalist. I don't like any of it. We don't have to go that far back in history to where this was not nearly as big of a deal. George H.W. Bush appointed, I think Sotomayor began under George H.W. Bush, if I'm not mistaken. I think she was a federal district judge under him.
She entered into federal judgery.
But she was an Obama pick,
she was
right?
an Obama
for the Supreme Court, yeah. But you can within living memory, you can go back not that far where we weren't trying to make judges political offices, and I don't like how that's happened. And I think part of the way to get around that is, can we acknowledge this is a really dumb way to try to stack a Supreme Court just in general? So most of my lifetime, we had 4 living constitutionalists, 4 originalists, and a swing vote candidate. That was most of my life. And that was really weird that we had like a specific formation of the Supreme Court where there's the wild card, and then the reliable Democrat leaning and the reliable Republican leaning. And it was like it had its own balance of power and checks and balances that was not actually built into the system. Right now, I kind of like, oh gosh, I just went blank. RV guy. How did I
Clarence
Clarence
Thomas.
Thomas. Like, I kind of like Clarence Thomas. A lot of the decisions that the Supreme Court has made the last couple of years, I agree with. So I'm not really I'm not like afraid if she retires that things are going to get screwed over. But this is what I'm afraid of. We've politicized the court so much that if you're on the outside of it, as Democrats are at the moment, not fun, and you're broadly removed from the machinations of government in a very profound way, possibly for a generation. So, like, for conservatives that are particularly, or conservatives that are in the Senate or the House, right now would be the time to think about how to structure this to where, if you're on the minority, you are not terrified. Because right now, if you're a Republican, you can go, hey, we have, I think, 9 Republican appointees on the court. Like the court is dominated by Republican appointees. Yay. That's not going to be there forever. In 10, 15, 20 years, it's going to swing around the other way, and they're going to be on the outside. So what I would love to see happen is, rather than trying to strategize about individual members as if they are fiefdoms that are held in perpetuity by blue team or red team, figure out a way to make the court less of a pressing issue every single presidential election. Like, something that I would do is just every president gets to appoint a Supreme Court justice automatically first term, and have the number of seats be elastic. It's not in the Constitution. It just says the Senate determines.
Wouldn't that make situations like this even worse?
How?
That you would now all of a sudden retirements become the thing. If they are appointed for a lifetime, then you are either pressuring people that are old to retire, or you are mad if they want to retire when it's inappropriate, depending on where the balance of the court is.
To clarify, this is what I would do. Like, right now we have 9 seats on the court, right? It's been as high as, I think, 11 in the past, maybe 12. It's been as low as 7 or 8, because again, it's not constitutionally mandated. It's just whatever the Senate decides. So what I would do is just have it elastic. I would not have a predetermined amount. I would say don't let it get below 9. If 2 or 3 Supreme Court justices retire, let the president bring it back up to that level. But I would be fine with it getting up to 15. So every time there's a new president, first term, that president gets to appoint a Supreme Court justice. That way, it's not a question of we have a limited amount of seats. If this person dies, we're fucked. I think that's a very bad way to run the court.
But here's my point, right? So in my political brain, now all of a sudden, if that's the case, you don't want Sotomayor to retire. You are begging her to stay on.
I got it. Yeah.
And you might beg her to stay on if she gets to 80 and to 90, because you want to maintain that balance.
I see what you're saying. Because if we had my system and you had an elastic number of justices, now it's very much, even if they're senile, keep them on the court as long as possible.
Yes.
Where did it say that they get the lifetime appointments? Is that a congressional thing or a constitutional thing?
I think it's constitutional.
That it's a lifetime appointment?
I think so. I think it's in there where, I could be wrong about this, but I think it's constitutional, where it requires an act of the Senate to appoint or remove a justice.
Okay. Because I would
make
just
your
like
point and I'll figure it out.
Because I just find the lifetime appointment thing to be ridiculous. So, I mean, if we were to do every president gets a new justice, I would like to see the person that's been on there the longest, like, thank you for your service, goodbye, go to the villages, like, you're done.
Just whoever has the most seniority gets pushed
and just
out.
have like a constant turnover every 4 years, and have a new judge, and that way we have new blood there, and that way it's not like, well, the court's going to be conservative now for the next 3 generations. Like, it's
But if it's constitutional.
If it's constitutional, that's a lot harder to change.
It's a lot harder to change. But again, you can modify the amount of justices on the court. That's something that the Senate could just do straight up. Yeah. I take your point, Justin. There's going to be some effects to this. But what
I guess in these particular situations, because right now this is a very prescient political situation, because Antonin Scalia died during an election year. Mm-hmm. Mitch McConnell blocked Merrick Garland.
But only because he didn't think it was appropriate to put a justice in there so close to an election. The people need to weigh in, and he never again would ever pull that card. He was consistent in application of that.
Yeah, obviously ridiculous. But also the balls to say, because I think Donald Trump's going to be the president, that was a bet that like if you were in Vegas, like I've been in Vegas sometimes with Brian, and he'll just be an asshole playing blackjack for no reason, and we'll just like double down on bad hands, and I'm just like, all right, and then sometimes he wins, and that's what 2016 was for Mitch McConnell.
Because Merrick Garland was a known commodity. I do think people misinterpret Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland is the quote unquote centrist jurist, and what they mean by that, when you actually look into it, is Merrick Garland sides with the administration in most of his cases. He is pro-executive branch. So when he was ruling under Republican presidents, he tended to err on the side of the administration, and they were Republicans. So you look at his record and go, oh, he supports the Republicans, therefore he's a moderate bipartisan. I would look at that and go, he gives a lot of undue deference to the executive branch. That's not the same thing, but all the same, he was a known commodity. And if I'd been a Republican at the time, I probably would have voted for him.
We had that happen, and then we had Ruth Bader Ginsburg die in before the end of Donald Trump's term, when the Republicans still had the Senate, and so we got the court that we have right now. So Democrats are very, very, very focused on it. But
that's why I find this so weird, is that Ruth Bader Ginsburg had cancer for a while, and we knew it. And she was also really old. And Scalia was a large man, and like his arteries, there were issues there. I don't know.
How dare you?
I know.
By the way, we do
Scalia's blood vein.
We do a podcast, right?
The thing is, though, that Sotomayor, first of all, she's only 70. And in this age that we have two presidential candidates in their 80s, I mean, she's a spring chicken. She is a youngin'.
One in our 80s.
Yeah, but if he actually wins, he's going to be in his 80s at the end of this term.
If you believe in math.
We're talking about a person who is 70 years old. There's no indication that she has cancer or anything that's like making us think that she's going to die tomorrow.
There is some medical thing with her. Keep talking. I'll see if I can figure that out.
Okay, that would change my argument here. But the fact that they're even saying this, like she's
diabetic. I can't remember what it is, but yeah, there have been some health issues.
If she's diabetic, then she was diabetic when she was nominated not that long ago. I mean, the Obama years are not that long ago. So the fact that they're trying to push her out at 70, I mean, for me, it has nothing to do with her being Latina or discrimination or anything like that. It's more to do with like she's relatively new on the court. She's not that old, and she's not sick as far as I know. So what the hell are we?
She is diabetic, but she's been diabetic her entire life.
Yeah, that's not a death sentence. Not in the way Ginsburg had cancer.
Pancreatic cancer.
Yeah.
Which she survived, by the way. Hats off. Pancreatic cancer is not an easy one.
Yeah, but she didn't really survive, did she? She's a little dead.
Because she got pancreatic cancer back in the 90s and survived that.
Okay.
But if you were to have this conversation about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and be like, well, she did have pancreatic cancer that could come back. And like, sure enough, like, so when we're talking about a relatively healthy woman who's in her early 70s, I don't know why they're thinking that she has to go now, as if the Democrats have no chance of winning in just 4 years.
According to Bloomberg Law, their senior reporter, the lead of this story is Justice Sonia Sotomayor made a point of describing how tired she was at a recent public event and how she's working harder than expected on the eve of turning 70. So that was public comment from her, but obviously
she's sleepy? So we have cancer on one hand and we have sleepy on the other, and they're the same thing. She's got to retire.
But this is Democrats being once bitten, twice shy.
Yeah. Well, right? I think that the counter argument to this, which I appreciate, but I'm not espousing myself, is if we're actually going to have jurists whose job it is to look at the law and objectively interpret it to the best of their abilities rather than arrive at a preordained outcome, you don't want justices retiring based on political calculations.
Yeah. That too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they do sometimes.
I just think that when you're looking at this, even for your political calculations, what are the odds that Sonia Sotomayor is going to last 4 years? I'd say they're pretty good. Where Ginsburg, that was a different situation.
She was only 92.
So, yeah.
But she was a boss queen.
Okay.
Icon. Work, girl.
Yeah, I don't know.
That was a weird one where especially liberal culture tried to like just Yas Queen RPG into
she
good
became
health.
this like kind of spirit animal figure. I really respect RGB, but I don't think most of the people that respect her ever read any of her opinions. Because like, here's one: she didn't think Roe v. Wade was very good jurisprudence. Like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Like now she was pro-choice. Like she would have, I can't remember the route that she would have pursued that, but she didn't think.
But we don't know how she would have voted on that one. We really don't.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect that she would have been a dissent on Dobbs v. Jackson, but all the same, like it. I think the reporting on the Supreme Court is so bad in our country, and it gets reduced to judges are super senators who are appointed to be unelected senators to push their policy agenda, and that's not the purpose of it. That is not what any judge there thinks or would say. RGB became this pop culture figure, she was kind of became like the Betty White of the Supreme Court of like she's adorable and
people
like
wearing T-shirts with her picture on it. It was very weird.
Yeah, and then you'd be like, what's your favorite opinion she wrote? And like, oh no, she's tiny and a woman and Jewish.
I saw that movie about her.
People knew more about her workout routine than they did about her judicial record.
Yeah. Well, so
no, we're all in no. Sonia Sotomayor should do whatever she damn well pleases.
Can I pitch? Yeah, okay, I've come around. Can I pitch a question to you? How would you depoliticize the court? Is it even possible to do?
Not if they're presidential appointees. I think this is just a natural part of it. But I do, like, when I watch the rulings actually come down, like we've seen the big scary Trump appointees rule with the other ones.
Yeah.
So it's like once they get on the court, they don't behave.
They tend to drift. I mean, there is a historic practice to that's if anything, it's one of the good things about the lifetime appointments is that in a very chaotic world, they do just sort of ascend to like DC heaven where they get the run of the place and they're don't have to worry about their job. I would say the only way to depoliticize the court is to provide political incentives to the Senate and the House to do things.
I agree. I think that's part of the reason this has become so politicized is Congress has become so wildly dysfunctional over the last 20 years that the court's taken up the slack where things are getting I am pro-choice. Roe v. Wade was a policy decision that was made by the court, and the ruling that it did was specious. I don't think it was a good ruling. Like real quick, you could make the argument, and I've had people make the argument that the Constitution only empowers the government to do what's spelled out in the Constitution. So unless it says that the government has the ability to adjudicate abortion, then it doesn't. I'm fine with that, but if you use that reasoning, it also means the federal government can't do about 3/4 of the stuff it currently does because it's not mentioned in the Constitution. So like that kind of like that situation there, like even though if I were in the Senate, I would have voted for a Roe v. Wade bill. I thought it was actually
a codification.
I thought it was actually pretty good policy, but I thought that the jurisprudence was judicial activism, and that just kind of keeps happening because Congress is so dysfunctional. Jen, can you talk to them?
Oh, I've been trying now for a decade. They don't listen to me. And I have a weird take on this because there is this branding of the Supreme Court now is so politicized. I question that is even true because we've seen quite a few rulings where it hasn't been politicized. We've seen like unanimous rulings. We've seen
Colorado ballot decision that was, I believe, unanimous that happened last week.
Yeah,
unanimous. So it's like I do think that these people
there was a little slap fighting in the like dissent and then re-dissent thing. But I thought that was good. I thought it was a good.
Yeah, I mean,
understanding
Amy
of all
Coney
the
Barrett wrote the concurrent opinion, but were there any dissenting opinions?
There was 3 written. There was like the explanation of, and you would know the actual terms. There was like an explanation of what the ruling was. Then there was the more living constitutionalist side of the court that questioned wording in the ruling. And then Amy Coney Barrett wrote another decision that was like, hey, let me re-explain why we use the word.
Consenting opinions are the best, by the way. My favorites are consenting opinions because consenting opinions go, I'm voting with Jen, but for different reasons.
Yes.
That's what a consenting opinion is.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, it was 9-0.
It was 9-0. It was 9-0. So that was important.
So the idea that like, Trump appointed these people and they're all going to vote for him, like that didn't actually happen. So I think a lot of this conversation about how politicized the court is, I think some of it's overblown.
I agree with you very much on that. And get ready, by the way, in the rest of this election. I mean, that should be trumpeted. The fact that I was unsure that it was a 9-0 decision on the Colorado ballot one is telling. Like that is a incredible indication that the court had a unanimous decision on an incredibly political issue, that the Democratic appointees were with the Republican appointees on that one. In the last election cycle, this really ramped up, and it came from, in my opinion, very poor court reporting. So one of the examples was, I believe in Georgia, maybe North Carolina, there'd been state-level squabbling of whether the legislature or the Secretary of State is determinate in terms of who's on the ballot, something to that effect. And the Supreme Court ruled in favor of, I don't remember, but it was clear proceduralism. It was the Supreme Court going, all right, this is a federal issue, therefore we defer to the state constitution. Their state constitution says the legislature, something like that. Like it wasn't, but all of the reporting was Republicans vote in favor of Republican bill or something like that. And it was like, nope, that like you can read one page of it and go, this is just procedural stuff. And granted, I am the son of a judge, but like, I think that the courts tend to have very high competency people in them. I don't think the same about Congress. I think you have a very wide latitude of IQ in Congress.
We have some real dopes in there.
Yeah, like there's a lot of people in like state legislatures, and I'm a local, local government guy, but there's a lot of state legislatures that are dumb as a fucking brick.
Yeah.
That like look at
There's
it
some
and go,
ding-dongs.
Wait a minute.
You got some ding-dongs around.
I get $40,000 a year and they have to call me honorable? Okay. Like that is a common occurrence, right? You don't find a lot of dumb shit judges. And then the other bit too is like they all like very much take the sanctity of ruling seriously. Like everybody on the Supreme Court right now is theoretically and rhetorically opposed to judicial activism. The bit that becomes questionable is, all right, subconsciously, how much is there a draw towards like, but I really want to end at this outcome. But nobody's being an outright partisan or a dipshit idiot. Like, and I read Supreme Court decisions regularly, and I disagree with, I disagreed with Katagi Jackson on the affirmative action. But like, she's not an idiot. I disagreed with her, but she's a smart lady.
Yeah. While we're on the topic of judges during political situations, did you guys see, as a follow-up to a previous conversation that we had, the Fani Willis decision came down?
Yeah.
I did not. What happened?
Boyfriend's got to go, but the trial goes on.
Well, theoretically, she had the choice. One of them had to go because there was an appearance of impropriety. So he did not find that there was enough proof to prove impropriety, but there was the appearance, and so therefore she had to choose either she could leave her position as district attorney or her ex-boyfriend could get fired.
Oh, are they exes? I thought they were still banging.
Oh, no.
Oh.
According to them, they are good friends that no longer have a romantic relationship.
Okay.
And now he's unemployed. So hit the bricks, Nate.
The good news is he made plenty of money during that employment to last for a few years.
That's
Break
for
out
sure.
the gray goose. Patreon.com/We're Not Wrong. It's where you go to support this show if you want to shower us with money on the program that you get exclusively. If you are a patron, we're going to discuss the possible upcoming disaster that is the eclipse, for which we'll traverse through not only America, but also Austin, Texas. And by the way, if you want to watch that eclipse with us, we are all going to be at the Founders Day event. That is April 8th. It is an all-day event. Head on over there, foundersdayeclipse.com for tickets. But it's going to be an absolutely awesome, awesome time. So everybody check that out. Patreon.com/We're Not Wrong. The rental car giant Hertz is facing significant upheaval these days. Marking its latest challenge is the departure of Stephen Scher, the CEO responsible for aggressively expanding the company's electric vehicle fleet. Scher, who joined Hertz after nearly 3 decades at Goldman Sachs, will step down at the end of the month. The leadership change comes on the heels of Hertz's announcement in January that it would sell off a substantial portion of said EV fleet, about 20,000 vehicles, or a third of its EV holdings, after taking a $245 million hit to earnings due to plummeting EV values. The company's strategy to embrace EVs, including ambitious purchases from Tesla, General Motors, and Polestar, aim to position Hertz at the forefront of the growing demand for environmentally friendly vehicles. However, the effort has been marred by market dynamics and operational missteps, leading to financial strain and strategic reassessment. Industry analysts criticized the company's management of the fleet, highlighting poor execution of marketing strategies that failed to account for the practical need and preferences of rental customers, like the lack of adequate charging infrastructure and rigid charging policies, which have dissuaded customers from opting for EV rentals. But this does enhance worries that 2024 EVs will see their first decline in sales ever. Ford has seen EV sales drop 11% since one of its marquee EVs was tarnished for its battery issues, while another became ineligible for a $7,500 tax break. With interest rates likely to stay high throughout the year, costs unlikely to come down, and charging infrastructure and battery issues still looming large for customers, there is now a small contrarian group of industry experts who are starting to see last year's U.S. record of 1.2 million vehicles sold as the peak, at least for the next few years. Jen,
You're an electric car.
Are
do have an electric
EVs
car.
still the future?
So I think so, but nothing that is happening right now with EVs not being adopted by the American people is surprising to me in any way. Because so I drive a plug-in hybrid, which means that I have fossil fuels and 50 miles of electric range. And Joe and I just did a road trip through the United States and found it very hard to find chargers in this country. And so even I, at this point, if I needed a new car right now, I would really have to think twice about getting an EV because of range anxiety, because I literally don't know where to charge the thing if I am not in a relatively liberal city like Austin or anywhere in the West Coast and a lot of East Coast cities. If you are in the middle of the country, like when we are driving through Wyoming and South Dakota and then turned south and went through Oklahoma, like I don't know where we would have charged it. And so we were on fossil fuels the entire time. Even when we were in our hotels, there weren't chargers at the hotels. There weren't chargers at the malls. Like I did not know where I could go. And as long as that remains the case, it's stupid for you to buy an EV because right now you can just go to a gas station and get your fossil fuels. You can't do the same with chargers. And last year at South by Southwest, I actually asked the actual Secretary of Energy what's going on with these chargers because they were funded in the Inflation Reduction Act, which has now been... It passed 2 years ago.
Also, so Joe Biden, a PAC that is supporting Joe Biden, bought $30 million worth of advertising for essentially his beginning of the 2024 campaign. And it's going to be running during March Madness. People are going to see it a lot. And in that, he touts, I signed the largest green energy bill.
Where is it?
Well, it's the Inflation Reduction Act, which
Yeah.
they couldn't pass the bill if they called it a green energy bill when they passed it.
The new Green Deal was already
exactly
lambasted. That wasn't going to be.
They had to call it the Inflation Reduction Act, but then it didn't reduce inflation. So now it's like, anyway, this green energy bill that I signed.
It was so stupid. It was never intended to reduce inflation. This is why I hate when they fuck around.
Give Joe
and get
Manchin
cute.
cover act of 2021.
Yeah, they just got cute with it because at the time, I remember the politics of the time, the Republicans were just screaming inflation even where it made no sense. Like you'd be talking about immigration, they'd be like, but the inflation! And so they were fucking with them with the name. But that does have long-term repercussions, such as we are now 2 years later talking about the bill that is supposed to fund chargers across the United States. Where the fuck are they? I don't think they're that hard to install, but they're not in the places where they should be, as in apartment homes. They're not at hotels. They're not at places where people have cars parked overnight. They're not in all of the stadiums. Like I just went down not that long ago to the basketball game in San Antonio. There was not a single charger for me to charge my car, and so we were in fossil fuels the whole way home. Until we have these chargers, people are not going to buy EVs. And there's also the problem with the credits in the Inflation Reduction Act. The goal of the Inflation Reduction Act was to get manufacturing into the United States of these EVs. It was not to get us to buy them. And so the credits get more and more difficult over time to get because they're really dependent on the sourcing of the parts in the car. So there's going to come a time where it's like you can't get, a Toyota EV because some of the parts are sourced in places where they don't want them to be sourced. Like there's going to be a lot of EVs that you can't get the credits for, which is also going to hamper the adoption of it. And then when it comes to like Hertz, I needed a car again.
Let's go.
So I needed a rental car for, I want to say it was like a week and a half. And I was staying at my dad's house, and my dad has an EV. He has a Chevy Bolt. We love his Chevy Bolt. We all love driving it. It is the best car. And so he has all the infrastructure in his garage that we need. And I wanted to rent an EV. I didn't know that Hertz was renting out EVs. So they've done no advertising of this because I was unaware.
Well, in their defense, they've gone through 5 CEOs of the last 4 years that have just come out of bankruptcy. So you can't expect them to be advertising.
Although I saw a lot of ads.
I have never seen
In
one.
fact, they were targeted to you. They literally starred Tom Brady.
Never saw it.
Tom Brady for Hertz.
But talking about they had EVs?
Yes. There was like a commercial where Tom Brady was getting plugged in and out to show that Hertz has EVs.
Oh, I definitely never saw that.
Yeah.
That's weird. Never got through to me. So, and you would think that as I was looking through the different prices, and if they're having this much trouble renting out the RVs, you would think that those would be some of the lowest prices, and maybe that would have caught my attention. But in that research I didn't even see
gotten
them.
it. So with my credit card, I got Gold Club for Hertz, right? So now I am exclusively renting from Hertz because I get nicer cars.
You Chase Sapphire, what do you use?
With Chase Sapphire, we get National.
Okay.
So I go first to National because we get special privileges, but they're not that
Jen
good.
and I have the same credit card account.
Yes.
We're very good friends.
And so EVs will always be advertised for me. They're always at the top of my search, but they are very rarely the cheapest.
Which is weird.
The only time that they were the cheapest was in Vegas. And so I got a Tesla in Vegas. And then we wound up getting one. We just booked a trip to go to Ohio during the summer, and we're going to get a Polestar. But that was like, there was an anxiety there because we're like, all right, we're kind of going into the middle of Ohio here. We're not going to stay in Columbus. We're going up toward Mansfield. Like, is the range going to be okay? And I think it's going to be fine, but
you didn't know where to get chargers, and Hertz does not have them in their parking lots. They did not make it, easy for people who rent there to charge. They've made bad decisions.
I did go to a mall in suburban Las Vegas because they had a charger there.
Yep.
And it was annoying.
It's good business to have a charger. Like if you're somewhere in the middle of fucking nowhere on a freeway and you put a bunch of chargers in front of your restaurant, people are going to go and they're going to order more than they want to because they have to sit there for 2 hours. I don't understand why people aren't installing them.
There was another Tesla there, and they were just sitting there, and I had no idea whether or not their car was fully charged.
Welcome to my world.
And then I plugged it in, and I'm like, should it be going this slow? I sat there for like an hour and a half, and it seemed like it only gave me like 15%. So I don't know whether or not that's normal or
Can I
weird.
I know a little bit about this. I am married to a solar engineer, so this is something that I've got in my back pocket. Let me lay some facts on you. So first,
rude.
Political thruples
Jen is exactly
coming
right.
to fruition.
Jen is exactly right. The federal government threw a bunch of money at solar chargers, and it hasn't manifested, and that is straight up incompetence on behalf of the federal government. The
Solar chargers.
I am shocked.
not solar. That's me carrying over from my last joke. EV chargers. Thank you for the clarification. Yes.
They have to build the damn things for them to be effective.
Right. You've done a special on the Infrastructure Reduction Act. I have not, but as I recall, the federal government did
Inflation.
What did I say?
Infrastructure.
I did not sleep well last night,
He's
gang. I'm
slowly
sorry.
decaying.
I didn't
We
sleep well.
apologize,
I'm really
friends.
sorry.
You can see his brain melting in real time.
Yeah. I should retire and open up the seat before the next president's able to appoint my successor. Okay, the Inflation Reduction Act,
Yes, which
a
is
lot
really the
of
Green New Deal.
infrastructure spending in it.
Yes.
As I recall, it had $7 to $8 billion that were set aside for electric vehicle chargers. That has not happened. As of now, in March of 2024, there are 2 that have broken ground in the whole country. Not finished, broken ground. There are 2.
Are you serious?
Yes, and it's a shit show. And the reason for that, as best I can tell, is that they did a very Biden thing, which is here's the goal, but also we can use this to help a bunch of our allies in it, And so what Biden did, and like your husband can talk about this, like say with solar panels, if the goal is to make solar panels cheap because we're worried about climate change, we want people to switch over to solar panels, then the goal should just be to get it cheap. What the Biden administration did with solar panels was we're going to subsidize solar panels, but we're also going to put in a Buy American requirement. So if China or whoever makes cheap solar panels, we're not going to let you use the money to buy that.
Yeah.
And you can see these
Which they do.
These are
most of them
contravening
come
goals.
from.
Is your goal to build up American solar panel manufacturers that are going to be more expensive than China, or is your goal to get more solar panels? If it's the latter, you want to have them cheaper, and it doesn't matter where they're coming from. The same phenomenon is occurring with EV chargers because the administration put the same stupid bullshit in the legislation for the EV chargers, which is they have to be using American-made steel and American-made aluminum. The electricians have to be union certified. They're all of the allies that are a part of the Biden coalition get a little seat at the table where they get a chunk of the money coming in, and it's put a stranglehold in actually being able to develop any of these things. So it becomes counterproductive. Going back to your question, Justin, about why, like, is it too slow when you're charging your car? My understanding is that there's two different types of EV chargers. There's AC and DC. So AC chargers are much cheaper. They're easier to put in because they go off of the alternating current that you would find in your home, and they're very slow. So like if you have an AC charger, it'll cost about $6,500 to install, which is very affordable, but it'll be a trickle charge that charges a vehicle over a 10-hour period. So
Gotcha.
Useless.
So good for leaving it in overnight.
Right. So
not, that would when I'm
potentially-
trying to
What
go
you
to the
dealt
bar.
with, because we deal with it all the time. A lot of times you'll see these chargers and there'll be two, like they look like guns on them. So you'll plug in your car. If your car is the only one plugged into that charger, it will be significantly faster than if another car shows
yeah.
up because they're splitting the energy between
Right.
the two. So that's why, like, if you have a line of 8 chargers, you'll see that like every EV driver will take their own charger because it's going to be much faster than parking right next to someone and using the same.
This was its own charger, but still, this very well could have been user error. And
to fill up my 50 miles, it's 2 hours.
Yeah, and
It's
so-
not fast.
So that's the thing. It's
Well,
like,
so that
for me,
might
I
be-
just didn't know, and it added another layer. Of like, I don't know what the fuck is going on.
That might be
Yeah.
the fast version, because the other version is DC current, which would be like an hour to 2 hour charge. Like the AC one that's going to be 10 hours would be useful at a hotel if you're doing a cross country trip. It would not be useful at a gas station or a restaurant because it takes you 10 hours, right? The DC chargers are much faster. I don't know how much, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours. But they cost about $40,000 to install, so they're much more expensive. So already, if you're using government funding, you might, as a local or even a businessman, you might go, well, I'm just going to put in a bunch of these tiny ones. What I would rather the government focus on is just trying to expand capacity on the infrastructure grid. I don't think that the government's going to do a good job trying to stoke demand on this one. I think that is 2 orders of magnitude removed. What I would rather them do is try to let the market work on it, but expand the energy grid. So like with these DC powered ones that are more efficient and faster, that are the only one that you'd want to use on a road trip, if you install one of them, it takes the infrastructure necessary for the electricity of about 10 houses.
Yeah.
It's a big draw on the grid, right? And you think about if we pull this off and we get a ton of electric vehicles on the road by 2030, when is everybody going to start charging these? At night. Well, right now, the way the grid works is at night is when we cool down the grid because everybody's coming home. They're not using their air conditioning. They're using less of a draw on the electric grid at night. So it's built into the system to cool it down at night. So the grid's going to have to be updated. It's going to have to be revised. There's going to have to be way more energy capacity that's put into it. And we're also going to have to figure out how to cool it down and modify
Well,
it.
they already have these amazing plans that experts have figured out where if you had a smart grid, the cars themselves and their batteries could be helping like manage the load and all of these different things with renewables. I mean, we can have a smart grid, but this is not the thing that the market is going to be able to handle. You have to have it be holistic, which means the government has to be in the
That
middle
might be
of it.
where the government should get involved.
Yeah.
Where I would say is like, this is something where the government could be involved in infrastructural capacity. Because if the market does work and people start buying EV vehicles and they get cheaper than gas vehicles and so on and so forth, it won't matter unless we've got the infrastructure that is able to carry it.
Yeah, and right now we just don't have the chargers. I keep screaming it, but we need to have the chargers. And until they are either required, like they have to be required in apartments because right now I think one of the reasons you're seeing fewer EVs being sold is because they really have saturated the early adopters, the people that are doing it for climate reasons, and the people who own homes. Because the people who own homes have garages and they can like determine their own charging situation. But I've lived in so many apartment buildings. This is the first one I've ever lived in that has chargers in the parking garage for the residents. When I lived here for the 4 months last year, I had to drive 7 miles to the closest charger. Like that takes a whole bunch of my range to go back and forth to do the charger. And I was just killing time. It was in the Zilker Park. So I would go there, I would stretch for a while, I'd run for an hour, then I'd dick around on my phone, all of this to get 50 miles of range. It was a real huge waste of time and we didn't do it very often. So as long as you're making it that difficult to get energy into your car, this is not something that people should be buying.
I think that's absolutely true. Like there is this is a practical thing. It's a practical consideration. That's a good point. I've got an idea. Please tell me why this is a dumb idea, because it's probably a dumb idea.
Yeah, go ahead, moron.
I'm inviting you to poke holes in this idea.
Yeah.
If I had $7 billion and I was the federal government and I was going to try to make electric vehicle chargers more abundant in the United States, rather than having 15 different, by the way, there's all sorts of stuff about like prioritizing Alaskan Indian communities and things like that, of like people that are just like not related to where electric vehicles actually would be, but just rather than doing all these weird hoops, what I would do is go, hey, if we're just going to use $7 billion to build available chargers at post offices, they're already federal or they're already like public property. They're part of there's something that the government can operate with. And, you could put in a provision there that it has to have adequate parking or something in order to do that. Wouldn't that be a more straightforward way for the government to build infrastructure by just using facilities it already has access to and going, hey, everybody, we're just going to build them and we'll use $7 billion till it's done?
I mean, it seems to me like the easiest thing to do is to even go to the private sector and say, we're just going to pay for these, install them. Because like I said, it is good business to have chargers at your place of business. There's a couple of chargers at the mall here. We have one mall. And I have found myself buying things that I had no intention of buying because I had to kill 2 hours at the mall. I've found myself buying dessert at a restaurant because I have to kill 2 hours at this restaurant. Like having the chargers there is a draw, because if my choice is one restaurant with a charger and one restaurant without one, I'm going to the one with the charger. So I think that if the government, it doesn't even have to be federally owned, if they just make it easy and say, install it however you want with
just
whatever
do
vendors.
Subsidies.
Yeah, just do it. But like you said, and like I said, the goal of the Inflation Reduction Act was to give subsidies to manufacturers that are American made. Like it was all about getting things to be American made, which
not to make them cheaper, but to build up American.
Yeah, the goal
business,
was not to make EVs what we drive. It was to make EVs in America, and those are different goals.
This is very different. Like this is one of the other things that like this is a real fucking hard truth for whoever's in the White House.
Heat and bomb.
Well, okay, if you're really worried about carbon, you're worried about carbon emissions, the most direct route to get rid of them is to tax them. And that, like, and no one's fucking saying this out loud. And like, if you're in the Biden administration, you truly believe that global warming, climate change are a very big threat, then you need to be taxing gas. But that would be wildly unpopular and regressive, and you would be hurting poor people. So there's a trade-off there. Are you going to hurt poor people? And like people that really are feeling that, if gas goes up to like $6 a gallon, they're going to feel it. It's going to be a real crunch on American workers. But like that, these are sort of difficult to do. People aren't going to buy electric vehicles till they're cheaper than buying gas vehicles.
Well,
here's the
also
deal, Jack. We can do both.
We can do both. We can make it cheaper than gas and make gas inexpensive at the same time.
When it comes
Don't
to
bet
electric
against America,
vehicles,
Jack.
like I don't frame electric vehicles as like some kind of climate thing, because if we're being honest, with all of the minerals and things that you need and shipping those around the world, they're not actually great for the climate. What EVs are meant to save is the auto industry. What EVs are meant to do is to keep us hooked on buying cars. That's what they're trying to save, not the climate. If we were actually trying to save the climate, we would be investing in trains. We'd be investing in things that are not cars. But the EV industry, they're trying to have it both ways, where we get off fossil fuels, but we keep buying fucking cars. So I'm actually not that big of a fan of the whole EV movement, even though if I have to have a car, which in the United States right now, I have to have a car, I would like it to be, not spewing fossil fuels, because there's also
this is
the
a fascinating
pollution
perspective. Jen, I love it when you surprise me. This is an example of Jen surprising me. Where I would have I was like, oh, this is a take that came out of not what I expected.
Yeah, I mean, there is an aspect of like, I don't want my car blowing fossil fuels everywhere, but a lot of that for me is pollution, because as someone who does walk a lot, as much as I can, when a big truck or a bus goes by me and like spews fossil fuels in my face, I know that that is poisoning me. Where I know that electric vehicles aren't. I also know they're quieter, so I just like them more. I like driving them more.
I'd love it to be quieter. I'm big on noise violations.
Oh man, they're so.
That'd be so nice.
The amount of noise difference between a city that has a lot of electric cars, like honestly, Los Angeles has gotten significantly quieter, and then you go somewhere that's still full of fossil fuel guzzlers and trucks.
I will say I've
never.
never been in a city where I've seen as many electric cars as Austin.
Austin has a lot.
Well, it's also Tesla here, right?
Yeah.
Like you're like I would.
Well,
think.
Teslas, Rivians. I've seen a shit ton of Rivians.
Yeah.
I've also seen a lot of Cybertrucks.
Yeah,
I know, they're
There's
weird.
a lot of Cybertrucks.
I
They're
like
so
Cybertrucks,
ugly.
and they look ridiculous.
Yeah,
Yeah, they look
they're
just
awful.
like if a transformer I don't know bonked a character in Tron.
It just looks like before they were able to get CGI good.
Yeah,
what every car looked like.
That's a great way to describe them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're hideous.
All right. Well, there we go. We figured it out. We're not wrongpod at gmail.com. Let's go. We're not wrongpod at gmail.com. Boom clap writes. Did Jen enjoy the thunderstorms that rolled through Austin on St. Patrick's Day during the early morning?
So I did. When I heard the thunder, I got up and rolled up my window so that I could watch the lightning, and I got 2 good lightning bolts right in front of my window, so I was excited about that. But then at 6:30 that morning, the fire alarm went off in my building, and so we had to walk down 18 flights of stairs. That pissed me off, and then we had a volleyball tournament the next day. So between waking up to watch the lightning and the fire alarm, I was very tired during the tournament, so I could have lived without it. I was really hoping that we would get a thunderstorm during the day, because my favorite part is the anticipation of it, like watching the clouds get really dark, and like that's my favorite part. I actually am not a huge fan of I am a huge fan of the night ones, but yeah, I love the night ones, but it's really like I love the anticipation of like watching them roll in and be like, oh, we're about to get fucked up, and you can't really do that at night. So yes, I liked it, but I was rooting for a daytime one.
Branch Trimmer writes, if you guys could remove any branch of the federal government from the act of passing laws, which one would it be and why? I am also willing to allow for the removal of the House and or Senate separately if you'd like the option.
No thanks.
The wording's a bit odd there.
I'm fine without it.
Is only one branch does pass laws, which is the legislature. The courts interpret laws, and the executive
well, the president
branch makes
signs it.
Yeah, okay. Like the executive branch makes regulations, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't remove any of the branches, but I would try to like shrink them and just figure out how to structure it better. Like I talked to a guy on my program a few months ago that had an interesting idea of the higher you go in government, the more votes it would take. So like right now, if you're trying to pass a bill and like you want it to happen nationally, it doesn't really make as much sense to try to go state to state. It makes more sense to go to Congress and try and inflict it upon the country. So I don't know. I would do a different form of tinkering than just shutting down
I think we've
a branch.
effectively seen what happens when you remove the Senate from decision-making processes recently, because anything that gets done is an almost direct communication between the loony House and the White House. That's pretty much how things have been going lately.
I mean, I just don't think we have a systemic problem with how we pass laws. It's not like the fact that the House and Senate are involved. It's the fact that we've staffed the House and Senate with awful idiots.
It's not that the helicopter is broken. It's that somebody keeps wanting to do loop-de-loops with it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, just hire a better pilot.
Yeah. Come on, ride the train, writes. I take a significant amount of train travel in the U.S. for both pleasure and work. I routinely take the Acela from my home near D.C. to New York City and Connecticut, as well as the Northeast region, and trains south into Florida. I've also taken the train from D.C. to L.A. If you leave on Friday night, you get into L.A. Monday morning. For all of Jen's fantasies about taking the train from LA to DC, it's wildly impractical, ignoring the absolutely unreasonable cost something like that would cost to build, which should be easy for her, direct as the bird flies trip between DC and LA on a train traveling at 199 mile an hour. I'm using the French high-speed rail as a comparison. With no stops, turns, slowdowns, or anything, it would take almost 12 hours. Realistically, you'd probably be looking at 17 plus hours after you factor in normal train things like other stops. Beyond that, it would probably cost several thousands of dollars to ride. For reference, a sleeper on the current cross-country Amtrak will run you about $1,500-ish one way.
All right. I am so excited to respond to this. So,
This man rides the train.
he does ride the train, but he rides it between DC, New York, and Connecticut, which I find interesting because
And south to Florida.
which I've also done. But if you are
Not a contest.
mainly riding the train around the Northeast, you are riding on tracks that are owned by the U.S. government. And therefore, Amtrak, which is a U.S. government company, is able to maintain a regular schedule. One of the reasons that you're calling my fantasy of taking the train from LA to DC a fantasy is because we don't own the tracks in the rest of the country. They're owned by the freight railroads, and they get to determine the schedules. They always prioritize their own trains, and so it is very hard for Amtrak to run a regular, reliable service in that part of the country. We also starve Amtrak of funds. So while we pump hundreds of billions of dollars into roads and highways, we don't really
Things that
give...
people use.
Well, we would use passenger rail. Like, obviously, if this guy is riding all the time between DC, New York, and Connecticut, and Boston, and like all those places in the
And
Northeast.
he went DC to LA because he likes it.
Well, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
I like the train where we do it well, but that's only in the Northeast. If we did it well in the whole country, I do think
But
people
his
would ride it.
his argument is an engineering one, that even if they had full access to it and it was going nonstop, it would at 199
It would still
miles
make
an
more
hour,
sense to take a plane.
that it would still be 17 hours between DC and LA and cost
Which
several
sounds
$1,000s.
Fucking amazing. Like, if you had a lot of trains, the reason that it costs a lot of money to take an Amtrak sleeper train now is because there are so few of them. So it's a supply and demand thing. If you're trying to go from like Seattle to LA, there's one train a day. And so if you're trying to get one of those sleeper cars, yes, it's going to be a lot of money. But if you had a train network like they have in other places, you would have more than one train a day, and therefore it wouldn't be $1,500. He also says it would cost a lot to build. What costs more, a highway or a train track? We also already have the train tracks. We've just privatized them all. And so we could nationalize them. Then we'd already have the system. It would cost us next to nothing. We'd probably have to upgrade it because we know that the freight companies haven't really maintained them all that well. But that is not going to be
But still-
anything close to the cost of the interstate highway system and the cost of maintaining it, which we are paying with our taxes. We don't ask drivers to pay that. So
But do you believe a 17-hour train ride that would be in the thousands would be market competitive with...
okay, it wouldn't be in the thousands. First of all, it just wouldn't.
Okay.
Like, you can do a similar train travel in Europe. Like, if you went from Oslo to Portugal, you have to do a lot of different stops, but it does not cost thousands of dollars to do it. So I will not say that that is realistic if you had a real train network in the United States. So let's take the cost out of it, because I don't think that's real. It's supply and demand. But the idea that, like, oh, it would take 12 whole hours to get across the
17.
country. Even 7 I've had to drive across the country multiple times now. That takes 5 days because I had to drive it myself. And so the entire time I have to hold the wheel, focus, pay attention. I can't work. I can't sleep. I can't read. I can't watch TV. You're telling me 17 hours
What?
I can go coast to coast while asleep? Sign me up.
You're sleeping for
Sounds
17
great.
hours?
I can on a
hibernating?
train. I can on a train. I cannot do that while driving.
Of course not, but I don't think that driving is the competitive force. It would be flying, which is cheap.
I don't know that it would be the best option, like, because there are a lot of people who do care about climate. I would take the train if it existed in the United States. Right now, we are talking about we are going to be driving from Austin down to Corpus Christi. If there was a train, I would absolutely be doing that. But doesn't exist, so I'm going to drive. There are a lot of places that I fly because I have no other choice. I would take the longer train experience because, first of all, I do love it. I love staring outside of the train. I love how easy it is to just show up, sit down, plug in my computer, get to work, or watch TV, or go to sleep, or whatever. There's no TSA. Riding trains in other countries is a wonderful experience. I don't care if it takes a couple hours more. And I am not necessarily going from LA to DC. There's a lot of stops in between. So you could be going from Denver to Kansas City or Nashville to Chicago. Like, there's so many places in between. And so if it's practical for us to drive cross country, which we do all the time, it is also practical to do it by train if the train exists. Right now it doesn't. That's the problem.
Can I weigh in on this a little bit? I really like trains.
Yeah.
I enjoy trains. I take them when I'm in Britain, and I love sleeper trains too. I think Jen's point that we tend to view roads as somehow fiscally invisible, whereas train travel is public expenditure, is weird and fallacious thinking. I very much agree with you on that. Like there's this idea of like, well, trains, like why should tax dollars pay for that? But like roads are somehow not a part of the equation. Like if we were just looking at a pie chart of money to spend on transportation, we could look at it as what percentage do we want to put on trains versus what percentage do we want to put on roads? Not private versus public, but just how are we apportioning public resources? And there's a good argument to be made that if we had trains that we would use them. Something that I would add to this is that there are certain structural phenomena within the United States that I think make trains less advantageous that you would need to change in concurrence with it. So one of the reasons that trains work so well in Europe is they have a lot of concentrated populations with walkable cities. That's why trains work really well. You're not going to get that in the United States outside of about 3 or 4 cities. Why? Because of zoning. Because we've made it illegal to build up in most communities in the United States. In like 80% of all major cities, you have to have single-family homes. You can't have apartment buildings. You also can't have residential and commercial areas in the same part. Like in New York City, you can do that. You can have bodegas on the ground floor and apartments above it. In most of the United States, you can't do that. So trains would not be practical in most of the United States because we're already making it impractical on the zoning level. The other thing I throw out is, Jen, you should fucking hate Dwight Eisenhower. If you're a very big train person,
get all up in Ike's shit.
And it's my understanding that the 2 reasons we don't have trains in the United States is, like, I want to back up real quick. You said that we privatized them. They were previously national and we privatized them, or so they were government owned train lines and we sold them off. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. It is my understanding that we had pretty good nascent train networks and a lot of competitive private train networks within the United States, and 2 things put a stop to that. One, the massive infrastructure spending of the Eisenhower administration prioritized highways. And at that point, once we built it, there's a path dependency problem where it's never again been a practical implementation to put in trains as opposed to just maintain these highway systems that we've doubled down on. So Eisenhower is largely responsible for pushing America that direction. The other bit is that the federal train department. Fuck, I'm tired. What is the thing I'm looking for? Transportation. Department of Transportation. The Department of Transportation.
The department.
The Department of Transportation, I guess in the same period, although I don't have the specific dates, started restricting transportation block grants to cities which had absorbed only public trains. So if you want to get a grant from the Department of Transportation, they wouldn't give it to a city that had private trains. They would only give it to a city that had public trains. And so what we ended up doing is we crowded out the private train networks that had previously existed. They got consolidated into public municipally owned train networks. And then later, the cities would go, well, we don't even want to maintain this anymore, and they sold it. And so you had a situation where you have federal spending pushing us towards cars over trains and simultaneously consolidating trains and putting them under public control when they're later sold off. So get rid of those things and also do the zoning in concurrence with it.
Also make people not like cars. People like cars. They like having the autonomy.
Some people like cars. There are plenty of people that would like to get around in different ways, but that
aware
doesn't exist.
Okay, I'm aware that you people exist.
Yeah,
I'm
but
just
like,
saying that the vast majority of America, it's like yes, we can
the
say that
vast majority
we can say
love
that Eisenhower,
cars, but they hate traffic. How does that work?
It's a thing that is dealt with, but in general, like yes, you can say Eisenhower pushed America in a direction, but also it became interwoven in the culture. People like it. Car culture is a thing. People like cars.
I think cars are necessary. In
Yes,
places where the trains exist in America, people take them and they are full and they're fine, but they don't exist.
There's just like this religious commitment to the idea.
No,
I
it's not
like it,
religious.
but
it's frustrating because I'm asking for basic infrastructure and being treated like, well, no one wants it. And it's like, that's not true. It doesn't exist, which is why people don't take it. I don't know how to prove that people will take it where it doesn't exist.
This is the problem with public infrastructure, is that ultimately you are dependent on the will of the populace.
And I don't think the will of the populace is to have these ever-increasing roads, the traffic that never gets better, because we all know that adding lanes only adds more traffic. It doesn't fix anything. We're going through this right now in Austin. We're going to have a decade worth of construction on 35, and it's not going to solve anything. We know all of this, and yet it's our decision makers, it's these lawmakers that we talk about all the time who don't actually follow the will of the people. It's not a religious thing for me. I just want to have options that aren't driving.
I like trains. I don't think they're going to be useful in suburbs or rural areas.
But that's not the goal. What I would like to see is to have, like, okay, here in Texas, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, Houston. Connect it with a fucking train, and then we can either do Ubers or buses or taxi or whatever you need to get around the
just inner city travel, the way like a Greyhound works.
Yes, and that way you're getting you're getting so many cars off the highway that are going in between the major cities, and then we can do other more localized things from there. I would also like to see bikes be safer because there's a lot of bike lanes here that are just, there's the one by the mall. Have you guys noticed this? It's in between lanes where people are going 75 miles an hour, and then they just put this teeny tiny lane in it and painted a bicycle on it as if any sane person is going to go on a bicycle in this lane. So we're calling things bicycle lanes that are completely unsafe. There are different ways to get around than just cars, and to say that people love cars, and I get accused. I don't love cars, and I am not alone.
Yes. I am not denying your existence.
You kind of are, though, because you're saying,
I'm saying that you're in the minority. I'm saying you're in the minority.
I don't know that is true, because no one else, you don't have any other options in most places in the United States. So to say that, like, well, people, look at all the people driving cars, they love it. It's a necessity. You have no other choice. So to say that this is proof that people love cars when they have nothing else they can try, I don't buy it.
I love car.
Well, that's nice for you. The entire infrastructure is based around your preferences. Fuck everybody else. And because people like me, here's the thing. You love your car? Keep your fucking car. I don't care. Mm-hmm. People like me would get out of your way. People like me would get out of your way. There would be less traffic if I was safely able to ride a bike. If I was able to take a train, it would be one less car, and I would guess thousands of less cars on your roads, and you could get where you need to go faster. So even for people that love their cars, not having any other infrastructure fucks you over too.
Okay.
It's not a religious thing for me. I just want other options. Trains, cars are also so fucking dangerous.
Amen. I recently was on a commuter train into Chicago on my way to work with my boyfriend. Usually we always listen to what he likes, but that day he said, I'm fine with doing my own podcast. My boyfriend is a legal resident status immigrant from Argentina when he was very young and is by no means a typically easily offended youth. Gee, brag about it. The one issue he takes irrationally seriously and sensitive is immigration. I tried listening to your podcast with him. He's listening to We're Not Wrong on our way to Ohio. However, he refused and flipped over the term illegal immigration in the title and not undocumented migration.
I got, you're exasperated, Jen. You take it, and then I'll weigh in.
I don't know, just the word police. I don't know.
Yeah, same. Two things. I am open to changing my language. Sometimes terms become atavistic. We ought to remove them. There are terms that I initially didn't like, and then somebody properly explained them to me, and I went, oh, I misunderstood that, and I'm okay using it now. So I'm not saying that you should just use whatever word you're using forever. The reason that I continue to say illegal immigration rather than saying undocumented immigrant, and I don't mind switching it up, but like the reason I don't banish the phrase illegal immigrant is when undocumented immigrant has been explained to me by my friends, it feels kind of mind controlling to me, to be honest with you, where like my friend explained it when, well, how can any person ever be illegal? And it seemed like the words were being changed in order to frame the debate in a way that arrives at a preordained conclusion. A conclusion that I agree with, by the way. I'm very pro-immigrant. I want to make it much easier for people to legally migrate to the United States, but I don't like being shepherded towards that way through some sort of linguistic manipulation. And so I kind of get my hackles up on it. Can I
interrupt you really quick just to piggyback on that? It's not that the person is illegal, but their presence in the country is illegal.
Right. It's trespassing.
They have done an illegal.
Yeah, right, they've done an illegal thing.
We have all done illegal things in the past, and they're illegal.
But when we go to Europe, we generally have a visa, and we leave before it's over. Like, that is a way to legally go to another place. If you are illegally immigrating into the United States, that's an actual thing. It's not that you don't have a document. It's that you are here illegally.
It's not that you didn't take your ID with you. Yeah, and like, I mean, if you want to use a different term that like Republicans would be fine with, I think if the issue is a person cannot be illegal, it's not good to have that be the noun. Okay, if you were to say a foreign national who is illegally trespassing, like I think conservatives would probably be fine with that language, because that's what we're effectively talking about is the civic equivalent of trespassing. The other bit I would suggest, and like easier for me to say this, I guess, but I don't think it's good for people to have words they flip out over. Right? I would advise you not to cultivate that in yourself. I think not saying if something's offensive, you can't call it out, but I don't want to have a red button that if somebody pushes it, I lose control. I would rather respond to things than react to things.
I have one more point about this.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Chicago has trains and these people took them.
I want to go back to the trains thing real quick. Okay, so my guess is if you did polling in the United States of if we could have trains or cars, where would you want to allocate the money? You'd probably find a higher amount of train enthusiasts along the coastal corridors that have dense populations because it would work there. And you'd have a very pro-car culture in the middle. Could you have a thing where we just pay for roads out of gasoline taxes? Because that's going to get passed on to the consumer. We're all going to indirectly pay it.
Kind of do, right?
Okay, hold on.
Are roads all, because if roads are all done through gasoline taxes?
Oh, they're definitely not. I
wasn't listening to anything you said.
Hundreds of billions of dollars we pour into roads.
Because I was looking at our title for that episode. The episode's called About the Border and Trump's New York Business Trial Penalty. I don't even think the phrase illegal is in our description.
You know what? I know this.
We said it.
I know this listener.
The phrase.
We did, and I know this listener, and he sent me a very kind email to this effect as well. I did say, I think the title on the political orphanage was The Economics of Illegal Immigration, which, again, I'm not trying to go to anybody.
But then email Andrew.
Here's the thing, though. Like, illegal immigration is impersonal.
Yeah,
illegal
it's also
immigrant. I can see you are, at least you are personalizing a thing. If I point at somebody and say that you are an illegal immigrant, that could have a connotation for which you want to soften. I don't agree with it, but whatever. At least I can see it.
You can see it.
If you're talking about illegal immigration as a way to differentiate between legal immigration, it just seems like it is a broad trend, impersonal element to it. And changing it to documented migration to undocumented migration does just seem like word salad for the sake of word salad.
Yeah. And my umbrage is I feel like I am being manipulated to arrive at a conclusion.
And this gets and this is a larger, broader cultural thing that I really, really hate. That we are shifting language or have shifted language because of the whims of assholes or people who are not being nice, bullies, right? Why is illegal immigration a bad thing? Probably because Rush Limbaugh said it a million times throughout the 90s. And so people believed that was now repeating a thing that was very popular and gaining favor. Without looking at the underlying issues or why people are for or against these issues, we're just mad because somebody we didn't like in bad faith, and I'll even grant it, probably in bad faith, was saying this term and these words. And so now we're going to change the words, hoping that the bullies don't find it and then don't say, undocumented migrant, and make that a bad thing that kids on the playground are sad
treadmill,
about.
Yeah. I think, like, this goes to a deeper idea. I don't think words are magic. I'm going to repeat that. I don't think words have magical qualities. There are a lot of people who do. And that, like, if you think in terms of profane and sacred language, where there are words that are a cosmic affront, if you use the words, the Lord's name in vain, that there is something inherent to that phraseology that is destructive to the morality of the universe, that is a religious argument you were making. I do not share that worldview. I don't think words are imbued with magical qualities. I don't think there are profane and sacred words. I just think they're information. You should take into account if you're intentionally using it in a way that's going to hurt somebody's feelings. You should also take into account the effect of the word, but merely uttering a word, I do not think is itself a morally charged act. Here recently, literally last Friday, I was having this conversation with some friends, and one of them brought up the phrase, the euphemistic treadmill, and I went, like, can you give, I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about? And he went, well, the word retarded. Because the word retarded started out as a kind term. The previous term that was being used in American medical circles was imbecile.
Yeah.
And a doctor went, that really has a negative connotation to it. What if we just said that they're slower? That would seem to be a kinder, gentler way to describe this. So they started using the word retarded. I have a desk in my home from the Edmond Retarded Citizens Center. They've maintained the name. And like one of my friends that I was with would only say the R word. She would not say retarded out loud.
Yes.
And I was like, I think in this context where we're just literally discussing a word the word itself is neutral, and you can say it in a clinical sense without getting mad about it. So that I very much err on that side of words are not magic; they're just information. And I think when you start getting into where it's charged, we're getting into religious
Say
territory.
the N-word right now.
Well, that's how Joe Rogan got in trouble.
As I mentioned, I think you should also take effect into account, and I'm very aware of what the effect would that be. But for the record, I don't think there'd be anything immoral about it. I
But
think
that's exactly what happened to Joe Rogan. He was having conversations about the N-word, which I'm not going to say. And so he was
for
saying
very practical reasons, yeah.
Yeah, he was talking about like how it's used and like he was using it in that context. He wasn't calling anyone that. But then someone did find every instance of him using it and then made a clip show out of it that lasted minutes long. And even he was like, oh,
And it
shit.
looked horrible. And I'd argue
awful.
if he's discussing a word, like if we're in court and I'm reading a transcript, is it somehow evil for me to say a word in the transcript out loud? No, it's just if
It's one of my favorite things. There was a period in the 2000s
Saying the N-word?
where for Bill O'Reilly was like at war with rap music, and so he was just reading rap lyrics as Bill O'Reilly. And so I think the one I remember, I will be seared in my brain forever, is him just reading Ludacris's "Move, Bitch." And it's just like, I'm doing 100 on the highway. So if you do the speed limit, get the F up out of my way. Drunk driving, hardly ever caught sober. But yeah, it's always funny when people read rap lyrics out of context.
Yeah, it's word policing is annoying.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm here for the discussion, to be totally honest with you. Like, I actually do like talking about rhetoric and why we say what we do and what elicits whatever stuff, because I do think that it gives us a window into our culture of where we're feeling pain, where we're feeling strong. I don't think that it's something that should just be banished and everybody should just say whatever they want. I do think that these conversations are important. But I agree with you, Heaton, that sometimes things are out of your control, and lessening your reaction to them, letting you dictate to the world as opposed to the world dictating to you, is a very, very important skill to
respond,
have.
don't react. And again, there are words that, like, when I was in Tulsa here a couple of years ago, I was hanging out with my friend Josie, who's a transgender lady, and she used the phrase cisgender, and I was like, I don't like that term. And she's like, why? And I'm like, well, like, cisgender, first of all, when I hear it, a lot of the time it's in a negative connotation, but it just sounds like a cyst to me. I don't like the sound of it. And Josie went, oh, do you not know the root of cisgender? And I was like, no, it just sounds like everybody made up something. She goes, no, like cis is just, it's a geographic term. It means, on either side of a river or something like that. And I was like, oh, that's the root? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, oh, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with using that term now. I'm okay updating stuff. I just don't want it to be, mind controlly or magical.
I would also say that depending on your language, I can probably tell a little bit about you. Like, if somebody's going to say cis, I probably know who you voted for the last 5 times.
Or someone who says unhoused.
Yes.
Yeah, I went on a show earlier this week.
And similarly, somebody who says illegal with like their full bass in their voice. I know how you voted.
The
right?
illegals, you know exactly how
The illegals is different.
I went on a show earlier this week, and I had
Great first album.
I had a really
The illegals.
I had a really good time on it. It was a fun conversation, and at one point, like, we were talking about stuff that, like, I was very much in agreement with them on, like social issues, like gay marriage and things like that. And then I was like, I realized I sound like a Republican, and everybody started laughing because I'm from Oklahoma. My word choice reflects that. What I really ought to start doing is just comma to achieve social justice, comma. I should just say that a lot more, and it'll throw people off. To achieve social justice, we should.
Yeah, but that's what you want to, like, camouflage yourself. You're like the dog who takes a shit and then throws a bunch of grass over top of it.
I don't want people fighting with me for dumb shit. I don't want to be fighting people on things they think I think that I don't.
But you can, I don't know. I think you put too much thought into heading that off at the pass, or believe that it's headable off at the pass, as opposed to just letting them be like, well, why don't you? And as soon as somebody gets all worked up about something, you immediately know how to
That's a really
it.
good point.
Yeah.
I had a really nice moment here about 4 months ago. Abby and I went to Thinkers and Drinkers, and I had this light, something political was coming up, and I was kind of worried about it. And a light bulb went off in my head where I went, oh, I have enough friends. Like, I wasn't going to be a dick, but I was like, it doesn't matter if these people like me or not. I'm not going to go out of my way to be a jerk about it, but I can state my opinion and let the cards fall where they may. It took me to be about 40 to get to that point where I'm not trying to run for mayor of nothing.
Or at the very
40
least,
and having this job, because having this job, no matter what you say, someone's going to get pissed off about it. So you might as well be kind, but be honest in how you feel and use what words you are using in good faith. And if people get upset about it, that's on them.
I'll just wait until I feel lonely and I need friends. Like right now, I feel like I've got too many friends. I forget birthdays. I don't
have enough time.
I'm not doing good enough with the friends that I have.
I know.
So I'll wait until I'm lonely.
I am an absentee friend, so.
Jeff Flake Updater writes, he is currently U.S. ambassador to Turkey. Unlikely he runs for president in 2024. This was in response to Heaton asking whether or not Jeff Flake was
Jeff Flake is one of the purged Republicans that I like. Jeff Flake and is it Ben? Who is the
Sass?
Ben Sass? Thank you, Ben Sass, who just left the U.S. Senate. I liked Ben Sass, and I liked John Huntsman, although he's probably aging out now. And
But
Mitch
Amash
Daniels,
is
who
coming
has.
back.
Love Amash.
Wow.
I would love for the
Hope so.
Republican coalition to be
He's going to get 0.5% of the vote.
Really?
In Michigan.
because I
people
endorsed
not
him. The
love
second
that?
I endorse a candidate, it's a kiss of death.
That's the thing. Things that seem so reasonable to us, like America just doesn't agree. And I'm just like, why? Why wouldn't
And
you
you're
pick
actually
Justin
you're
Amash?
going to really hate the guy who is going to get the nomination, who's got both Trump and the NRSC.
What's the NRSC?
nod, the National Republican Senate
Okay,
Committee. Mike Rogers, who is a big security state guy.
Wasn't he the chair of the House?
Yeah, he's running for. He's out of that House now, I believe, but he is running for Senate, and he is most likely going to make it to the general.
Yeah, he is a warmonger for sure.
Let's get to TikTok. Bill Reader writes, after the last podcast, I felt encouraged to go read the bill. Isn't the bill written such that it only applies to apps made by or operated in, domiciled in China, North Korea, Russia, and Iran?
Yes. So this is one of those things in the last episode I told you I wasn't able to completely tear it apart. And so that was one of the things I had to jump into current law to find. And so right now, this can be changed, but right now a foreign adversary is defined as China, North Korea, Russia, and Iran, which does go to prove my point that this bill goes far beyond TikTok and China. It applies to those four countries. And by the way, an app, website, or game, or all the things that would be applied with this bill, it only has to be 20% owned by someone from one of these countries to be targeted for elimination by that bill. So it is much broader than we are being told, but yes, it applies to those four countries.
Yeah. By the way, as we are recording this, the Senate is getting their briefing, which is similar to what the House's briefing was, and the House's briefing led to them throwing this bill as fast as this House can move up to the Senate. So
whatever the spooks are telling them, it's freaking people out.
We will see. We will see. But when I was watching all the Sunday shows, which I do every week for the PX3 patrons, boy, did it sound lockstep.
In what direction?
In the direction that it's going to get passed in the Senate.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah.
I'm hoping that we have
let's
enough
look
time.
at the bright side. This is going to knock out a lot of attention competition for us. And so this could benefit us even if we don't agree with the bill.
I don't know, man. I think we're going to regret this one. Do you mind if I pitch Congressional Dish now?
Yeah.
Because I just released the episode where I went through every detail of this bill. Like I said, this is beyond TikTok. So no matter what you think of TikTok or China or anything else, this is going to target so many more apps for elimination. Like one that I was able to actually look into is Telegram, which is a encrypted messaging app. It's owned by a Russian citizen. He hasn't been in Russia for 15 years, but it doesn't matter. He's a citizen. He owns more than 20% of it. It would be eligible for elimination via this process that is established from this bill. This bill is more than TikTok. If they want to ban TikTok, they can ban TikTok specifically. That is not what this bill does. So if you want the actual details on that, please listen to that and please share it before the Senate moves, because I don't know how many of these people have actually read the text.
Well, there is the biggest thing saving it from sailing through is that the Senate looks at the House as a semi-evolved Shoney's and does not like doing exactly what the House says. So in general, so I would suspect that even if people generally agree with the thrust of it, and there were some bold-faced names on the Sunday shows that were not giving, the only dissenting voice that I could find on the Sunday shows was Ro Khanna, who already voted against it, and he's in the House. So his voice is, and even he was bending over backwards to talk about how his opposition to the bill was not an opposition to China or really even a support of TikTok. With that being said, keep an eye. By the time that folks are hearing this, keep an eye on what was reported. What is the new news about the Senate? Because most likely people are going to come out of this and reporters will talk to them and you will get a better sense of where the roadmap on this is. The Rule of Two writes, when Andrew first said Siphius, I thought he was referring to a Sith Lord that I'd forgotten about.
Man, your instincts are in the right place. No, but I like where your head's at.
A concerned Zoomer writes, we obviously cannot...
Oh, one quick thing about Siphius. The answer to your question, like why we couldn't find anything about Siphius and TikTok's negotiations, is that they're not allowed to talk about ongoing negotiations. So there isn't going to be a Siphius report, possibly even after their negotiations are done. But they're still ongoing. They haven't finished. And we're not allowed to have details. The only reason we had them in 2022 is because of a leaked document. But they can't actually tell us what's going on.
Okay. Huh.
A concerned Zoomer writes, we obviously cannot know exactly what was said in the skiff for the House. He's referring to that briefing. But I found it surprising that you did not discuss the publicly available analysis of TikTok's algorithm and its control by the CCP. The Network Contagion report conclusively outlines how the app selectively promotes and censors content that the PRC finds sensitive, from the Uyghur genocide to the Hong Kong protests. Given that the PRC's geostrategic aims, I find some of the dismissals of a security concern as Congress merely disliking Israel-Palestine content a little disheartening.
Well, it's not Congress. The reason I said the Israel-Palestine thing, I'm assuming I said that because I know I said it in my episode.
No, I said it.
Okay.
That was reportedly part of the presentation in the skiff.
Yeah. The author of the bill also wrote a op-ed where he said that TikTok is the reason that young people side with Hamas. And like, as much as I disagree with that headline, like that he connected TikTok and Hamas. So this isn't just like
but
some conspiracy theory. They're talking about it.
Coming out of the presentation was that pro or anti, what was viewed as videos that were presenting a pro-Palestinian perspective were juiced before the incursion into Gaza, like after October 7th. And so that's what was looked at as, heightening divisive rhetoric.
Yeah. But like, regardless, I actually think we did talk about TikTok's algorithm, but the point is that the bill that's moving through Congress right now, it's not just about TikTok. It's about more than that. And also, if you're worried about censorship, X censors and Facebook censors. Facebook right now is basically saying, because they don't want to deal with, being accused of censorship, that they're just going to downgrade all news organizations' sites. So it's like all of these different platforms are choosing content moderation, including one that is, and even the idea that it's controlled by China. It's not. So I don't know. The point is, no matter. Well, so that's the thing. We
don't know.
That's the thing. We don't
know.
We don't know. If you have concerns about TikTok, though, this is not the bill that should be dealing with that, because it is about so much more than that. It's about giving power to the president that I think we are going to regret giving him. Because it's not just Biden.
Her.
That's exactly my point. It might not be Biden that uses this. It could be Trump or whoever the hell comes next. Once you put something like this into law, it's very hard to yank it back. It doesn't matter how worried you are about TikTok or the CCP with this one. It really doesn't.
So I watched a bunch of stuff. Tom Merritt of Daily Tech News Show, friend of the program, he did a segment on his show, Know a Little More, which I helped produce, which I would encourage you to read or listen to rather, if you are looking for a bit of an argument in favor of ByteDance. Tom is very skeptical of claims that, they are affecting the algorithm or that the data is unsafe. And then I watched Ryan Macbeth, who's an open source signals analyst who's been on the show a lot. He did a very virulently anti-TikTok video where his point of view, which I did find to be the most interesting, although it doesn't particularly have anything to do with this bill, that, we with the FCC restricted foreign ownership of television and radio stations.
That's why Rupert Murdoch's a citizen.
Exactly. And now television and radio are not king media anymore. There was a time in which they were. And so is there a well-needed updating that the internet has become king media? It is, and apps have become effectively stations for which command as much, if not more attention than any one television station ever did. Is it time to think about the idea of foreign ownership of these kinds of outlets? Whether or not we come to the same conclusion, I think is up to whoever does it. But I do think that that's an interesting idea.
It is an interesting idea. I think we also have to examine what they mean by ownership, Because in this bill, they mean 20% someone who's just from one of those countries. So like the founder of TikTok, he was 29 years old when he invented this thing. Like he's not some CCP agent as far as we know. Their board is not made up of all government officials. Like we really have to look at what we mean by ownership, because I think when we're talking about making it impossible for Americans to access an entire platform, I do think that probably having a controlling ownership should be a standard instead of 20% just a citizen of some country. Like they're being very loose with what they even mean by ownership. So, because when I think of ownership, I think of, it's an app that is definitely controlled by the Chinese government. Like that is not the case of TikTok, and that is not what this bill would enable. Like 20% is not even a controlling share. So, you think 20% is a controlling share of anything?
I think there's a lot that you can do with corporate structures, and that doesn't necessarily mean whoever's pulling the strings are pulling the strings. I think that you can have minority ownership and still be pulling the strings. And right now, ByteDance, which is the parent company of TikTok, is a company. ByteDance owns that company, and the algorithm that ByteDance licenses to TikTok is the same that they license to Douyin in China. It is incredibly complex. It is something that the data leaks we do know about are Project Texas, the independent company that TikTok agreed would hold their data and administer their algorithm. The data leaks that have happened are because the Project Texas is trying to figure out technical elements of the algorithm to do what TikTok is telling them to do, and they haven't been able to figure out. So they have to email stuff back to TikTok in Beijing and say, hey, fix this. Now, anecdotal, right? Not actual evidence. Anybody I've known who's worked for TikTok has no illusions of exactly where this company is run. And it's not from Singapore, and it's not from Santa Monica. It is from Beijing. That's where the offices that matter exist, and nothing happens in Beijing that the CCP cannot control. That is just reality of how they operate. They do not operate a free market system where, the government, overreach though it might in America, you can still take it to the courts, theoretically. That doesn't exist there. Okay. But
we're talking about banning an entire platform and many others from the United States on suspicions of what these other countries are doing, and ownership that is not necessarily controlling. So this is the thing, like, you can be worried about TikTok, but they are making laws based on TikTok that will affect other platforms.
I don't want to go back to the law, because I do think that there are problems with the law, and we'll see where it winds up getting hammered out. But to your initial thing about, I am not convinced that a 20% holding or a board that has 3 Americans on it necessarily tells the whole story. I believe that, China's hold over, people and offices in Beijing and control over the algorithm, and the fact that they are able to say, no, if there is a forced divestiture, the algorithm is not being sold with it.
Yeah, so TikTok would be a different product.
They have said, and they have control over that. The CCP says no. And so if they have control over that, then what else do they have control over?
But what we still haven't really established is, like, how is that dangerous for us?
Well, if the CCP is controlling the algorithm, it means the CCP could be juicing the algorithm to try to manipulate people.
Okay. I mean, I feel like we're manipulated every time we open any social media app. So if we're all aware that this is a Chinese thing, like, okay, I think I can handle understanding that. It's one of the reasons I don't have it on my phone. Okay.
There we go. Boeing is the subject of the emails that I'm about to read. An aerospace manufacturing vet who believes pilots are, quote, perched on the peak of inflated self-assessment, having high confidence opinions despite not knowing anything substantive about the topic, writes. Number 1, FAA audits are about as understandable and desired action. We need to understand why the Boeing incident occurred. Passing 56 audits and failing 33 sounds horrifying, and it is truthfully a good wake-up call for Boeing, as they have obviously let their standards slip and deserve correction. Number 2, Aviation runs on documentation on top of documentation on top of documentation. It's been said that the plane's wings don't need to generate any lift if we can figure out a way to stack the airplane on top of all the associated paperwork. And all of that paperwork exists for very good reasons. But without knowing the content of the audits, nobody knows what they passed, nobody knows what they failed. So we have no way of evaluating the real world seriousness. It's possible that Boeing could earn a fail if the technicians are doing everything properly, but that the engineering manuals do not exactly specify which tool they should be using, or the failures could be something catastrophically serious. We just don't know. To analogize, Boeing failing 33 audits is about the same as Trump getting 30 indictments in the Stormy Daniels case. There's likely 1 or 2 serious findings and a lot of filler material since the list-making people were there making the list.
This makes me feel a lot better. And also, that's a really good analogy. Thank you. That I think puts it into frame much more. And I like the pot shots taken at pilots where we're getting this inter-economic sector backbiting. Yeah, this is really helpful to know because I remember looking for that last week because it is a glaring headline of, failed 33 out of 50 things, but it didn't really specify what they were. And if we were going to know the full totality of what's going on, we would need to know, are these, technicalities and filing issues, or are they actually like, guy forgot to put bolts on door?
Trade Federation auditor writes, Qui-Gon Jinn is not the superior Jedi is a pretty funny quote coming from the Qui-Gon Jinniest of the We're Not Wrong crew.
I don't know what that means.
I love that we're talking about, thanks, hot girl. I love that we're talking about Star Wars. I love that we're talking about Star Wars. I can't tell if they are...
Shouldn't you be out making friends?
Yeah. Shouldn't you be putting on lipstick while glaring at people on the debate team? Fuck off. I don't know if they're making fun of me here or not. I can't tell if this is pro-Heaton or anti-Heaton.
I think, no, they're saying you're Qui-Gon Jinn. So it really
in that
depends.
case, thank you.
Yeah, you're very wise but boring.
Bearded Mr. Rogers.
Jen Briney, sports question of the week!
I get one.
Now that the NCAA is going to allow double contacts, where do you land on the it will promote better continuity and flow of the game versus it's going to ruin the finesse and artistry required to be a setter argument?
Oh, I think I land more on the it will promote better continuity and flow of the game. For people that don't know, when you set a ball, it's supposed to come out completely clean from your hands. So the touch.
I don't know anything about this.
Okay. So when you set a ball, it's supposed to come into your hands and come out completely clean. It's not supposed to spin. And if it doesn't spin, it really shows you that your hands hit the ball at the same time. And so sometimes the ball will spin, even if you do that. But if the ball spins, sometimes that's indicative of one hand hit it before the other. And they call that a double contact. Doesn't really have an effect on the play sometimes. A lot of times you're just giving your hitter a shittier set, so it's not exactly good for you when it happens, but it is so subjective. And when I interned for the Pro Beach Volleyball Tour, there were some refs that you just knew were going to call these every time and were super strict on it. And there were some refs that fuck it, we're just going to let you play. And so it's really subjective based on which ref is watching, what mood they're in that day. I know that when I have to ref, it's one of the things that I just hope I don't have to get involved in, because you'll have one side of the net being like, that was a double, and the other side being like, no, it wasn't. And you have to make the call. It's I don't fucking know. It's confusing for the players. It's confusing for the fans. And so in a way, I like that they're changing it, but at the same time, does that mean that you can hit it with one hand and then the other? Because technically that's a double, but so it just, we're going to see how it actually shakes out. But because so many arguments are started based on double contacts and setting, I think it's at least an interesting experiment to do away with those calls and see what happens.
Couldn't disagree more. 180. You are so... Did you hear what a soulless, mechanical interpretation of this sport that was? Jesus Christ. Can we give a little bit of appreciation for the artistry and finesse that goes into it? This is going to fuck up setters all over the goddamn place.
Are whiny
we might
setters.
as well just stay home and play checkers after this travesty.
Yeah.
We're Not Wrong is a production of Dog and Pony Show Audio. Our editor is Will Saddleberg. On PX3 this week, we have Tom LoBianco of 24 Site talking about the professionalization of the Republican National Committee. And on Friday's show, we have a former border sector chief, Chris Clem, on the program.
Oh, you bring
Yeah.
on Chris Clem, huh?
We got Clem on, and so we talked.
He's a very good chat.
It was an extension of a conversation that I had with him at the bar in McAllen, which is how media savvy are the cartels? Because it's the thing that I have always found stretches my sense of. Well, I'll put it this way: anybody who's like, okay, Biden's policies caused the current border crisis, and it was because Biden came in and look at all these clips on him raising his hand saying you should come to the border, blah 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 blah, these executive orders, like that's the reason why it happened. And I go, yeah, well that makes sense because I watched that debate and I followed all those executive orders. And then I have this moment where I stop, because as a journalist you are trained that whenever something seems too clean, something seems to agree with your way of going about things too much, you want to hold back and pour more scrutiny on it. And so I'm like, wait, are the human trafficking cartels that are bringing people on these false pretenses for asylum claims have the same media diet that I do? Are some of them like listening to my content? And so I asked him that question as I did at the bar, and he gave an expanded answer, and I would encourage everybody to listen to it.
Sorry. Jesus Christ.
Heaton.
I was just going to say, you already know what Congressional Dish is, so go listen to it.
Yeah.
The TikTok episode.
Chances are you all have never heard of a guy named Lester C. Hunt. I did not hear about him until recently. He is one of the few people who died in the United States Congress. And the kickoff to this week's episode is playing footage of Joe McCarthy right before the censure vote that began the downfall of him. And that vote did not include JFK, who opted out for health reasons. But Justin, I think you'd agree with me that JFK was pretty good friends with Joe McCarthy.
Joe McCarthy, dated
two Kennedy sisters, almost became brothers-in-laws.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's
Bobby interned with him.
If there's somebody that you could have counted on to vote against Joe McCarthy, it was Lester C. Hunt, but he didn't do it because about 2 months earlier, he went into his office at the Senate and he shot himself in the head with a gun. And this brings up the question of why would a popular sitting U.S. senator shoot himself at the Capitol? And the reason for this was that, and this only came to light somewhat recently, his son was gay. And he was being blackmailed by the Republicans at a time where there was a very active federal war on homosexuals in what's called the Lavender Scare, which is a chapter of history I did not know about until I brought on this week's guest, Jonathan Rausch of the Brookings Institution, to talk about it. And he makes a very compelling argument that the Red Scare that we all know about with Joe McCarthy and all of that stuff is comparatively weak to the Lavender Scare, which is the most totalitarian, thought-controlling chapter of all of American history, of trying to get into people's heads, of trying to get into their personal life, their bedroom, everything else, of being just insidious Orwellian. It is peak Orwell in the American experience, this chapter that is the Lavender Scare. And so we learn about that on the Political Orphanage.
That sounds very interesting, educational, and dark. Which
dark.
Reminded me,
It's dark.
that on Wednesday's PX3, I should have led with this. People without fail, whenever I talk to random people about politics or listeners, at some point, somebody will ask me, what happens if one or both of Joe Biden or Donald Trump die?
Yeah.
That is something that gets asked all the time. I never like talking about it because it's unpredictable and it's weird and it's macabre. But
And they're both historically popular candidates that would be really sad if that
And
happened
they're
to.
so young.
Yeah.
But I did this week. And so we get into it, and we get into, guess what? The two most recent examples of people dying when they were either the incumbent president or a leading candidate, both Kennedys. 1963, 1968. So we go through what exactly happened mechanically through that, and some very dark thought experiments as to what would happen if one or both died. But that's on PX3, and this is We're Not Wrong for Andrew Heaton and Jen Briney. I'm Justin Robert Young, and indeed, we are not wrong.